Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Good Jobs Challenge Expert Panel. My name is Michelle Chang, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy at the Economic Development Administration. We are so excited to have you all here today. We have almost 900 folks in attendance today, and that just shows the great amount of interest that we have had for this program. And so today, what we'd like to do with you all is to do a couple different things. First is, as you all know, the deadline for the Good Jobs Challenge is about 1 month away from now. We know many of you are busy getting your applications ready, dotting those last I's and crossing those last T's. And so with today's event, what we'd like to do is a couple different things. Number one, we'd like to go over with you some tips and insights on how to make strong, robust applications. Number two, you're going to hear from two expert panels of folks who worked very closely in the workforce space to hear about some things that they have learned from their experience on how to put together effective partnerships and strong employer engagement in workforce development programs. And then lastly, we want to review with you the key elements that we will be looking for in the Good Jobs Challenge application. We're going to review the evaluation criteria. So as you are thinking about putting together your applications, you can keep in mind the key elements that we will be looking for as we evaluate our applications for this program. So with that, we'll jump into the event. If you go to next slide, please. Just an overview for all of you. As you may already know, we at the Economic Development Administration, Department of Commerce, received $3 billion in the American Rescue Plan. We are really excited to use these funds to support bottom-up economic development while focusing on advancing equity and getting workers the skills that they need to land quality jobs, for example, with this program, the Good Jobs Challenge. Next slide. As a reminder, we have 6 different programs under the American Rescue Plan that we are using to distribute these $3 billion. As you see on this slide, those funds are being used to be able to help create jobs for today, communities built for all, and regions for the future. We urge you to take a look at our website, eda.gov/ARPA, that stands for American Rescue Plan Act, to learn more about all 6 of these programs. Today, we will focus, of course, on the $500 million Good Jobs Challenge. Next slide, please. As many of you know, the Good Jobs Challenge is really designed to help get Americans, particularly those from underserved communities, back into good quality jobs by establishing or strengthening regional workforce systems that will train workers with the skills that they need through sectoral partnerships. As a reminder, for this program, we are able to fund 1 to 3 phases of the workforce development cycle. The first is system development, and we really want to stress this piece of work. This is really funding to help build the capacity of regional workforce systems and sectoral partnerships. The second is program design. This is the funding to be able to develop the actual skills, training, and curriculum, as well as the technical expertise to train workers. During this phase, we also anticipate that applicants will be securing employer commitments to hire. The last phase is program implementation, where we'll fund the actual delivery of the workforce training, as well as wraparound services to support that training. We do want to emphasize a few things as you're thinking about this program. First is that training programs funded under this program may focus on helping workers who are either unemployed or underemployed, helping them to access quality jobs through quality job training. It can also be focused on upskilling incumbent workers for higher wage positions. We also want to mention that projects for this particular program may be either national in scope or for only a specific region. So for example, if you are an organization that works in multiple locations, we are open to accepting applications that may cover regions that are non-contiguous in the United States. Next slide. Now, this program has received interest from a record number of diverse organizations. And as we are looking at the different questions that we have received about this program, we wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about what this program is and what it is not. First, the program is to build and strengthen a regional workforce system and build that capacity in a region to be able to train workers for the skills that employers are needing. This program is to fund employer-driven training programs and wraparound services as part of a regional workforce system. It is also to fund a regional workforce system that provides training that will lead to placement in quality jobs, which we'll talk a lot about today as we go to our panel that will focus on employer engagement. What this program is not, it is not a curriculum funding program for universities. It is also a program not just for wraparound services, but it can be one that has a regional workforce system that will include wraparound services. It is also not a program just for individual programs, but it is for a regional workforce system. It also is not a tuition reimbursement program, and also is not a program for just K through 12 programs. However, it can be a program that will have regional workforce systems with a component of K through 12. Next slide. Now, in terms of how we measure impact at the Economic Development Administration, we traditionally look at the following different metrics. We look at job retention and creation, private sector investment, new firm formation, or foreign direct investment. We want to call these out, particularly the first two for this program. We really want this program to be able to help retain jobs and obviously place workers into these good quality jobs. And we are looking for strong engagement from the private sector. EDA really achieves these outcomes through construction and soft programs that increase capacity building and business development in order to attract private capital investment. And so we really want to stress that Good Jobs Challenge applications should focus on regional workforce system development that increases the economic capacity of a region. Next slide. In terms of who can apply, this is all on our website, but in short, we are able to accept applications from any entity that is not for profit or an individual. We do expect the lead applicant for the Good Jobs Challenge to be either the system lead entity for the regional workforce system or the backbone organization for the sectoral partnership. Next slide. And just a couple quick notes as we think about the panel and the next conversations that we have. For this particular program, we are defining a quality job, which is what these training programs are intended to do, is to place workers into quality jobs. We are defining that as a job that exceeds the local prevailing wage for an industry in a region, that includes basic benefits and or is unionized, and helps an employee develop the skills and experiences needed to advance along a career pathway. A couple other notes. For this program, we're really excited that we can fund a wraparound service. So this is any service that removes any barriers and provides support to a trainee as they go through workforce training. This can include transportation, language support, financial coaching, childcare, career navigation, and access to technology. And then lastly, we want to make a note on employer commitments, which we'll talk about on our employer engagement panel shortly. EDA is seeking applications that have firm employer commitments to hire. This can come in a number of different forms. It could be a work and learn program or a registered apprenticeship. It could be a conditional hire where an employer hires a worker on the condition of successfully completing a training program and demonstrating that they have mastered the skills needed for that job. Or an employer could commit to hiring a specific number of workers who have successfully completed training through that sectoral partnership. Next slide. And just a reminder, as we all know, that deadline for the Good Jobs Challenge is coming up. January 26th is the deadline for all applications for this program. We anticipate making announcements of awards in summer of 2022, and there is a maximum award performance up to 5 years. I will note that, as you will note in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, we are prioritizing projects that can train and place workers into good quality jobs within a 24 to 36 month time frame. All right, with that, I am very excited to be able to announce and share and introduce our Assistant Secretary, Alejandra Castillo, who's going to moderate our first panel. I'll turn this over to Alejandra.
Thank you, Michelle, and hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here today. We have a fantastic group of panelists with us today to talk about ways to strengthen your application for our $500 million Good Jobs Challenge. Before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to thank you for the work you do and are doing in your communities to connect Americans with training opportunities and good paying jobs. The Good Jobs Challenge funding will provide transformational investments into regions and local communities to not only get Americans back to work, but to ensure that we build an economy that is inclusive and more equitable than before. I'm looking forward to seeing your ideas, and my team and I want to make sure that we take the opportunity to bring everyone together to talk about the components of a strong application. As you heard from Michelle, this information is not only critical, but hopefully you will use it to help strengthen your applications. And this recording will be available after as well. So with that, let's get started. Today we have three amazing panelists with me today, and I will begin with Lexi Barrett. Lexi is a senior advisor to the Secretary at the U.S. Department of Education. Lexi was most recently an associate vice president at Jobs for the Future. At JFF, Lexi focused on advancing nonpartisan, practice-informed public policy that supports economic advancement. Before joining JFF, Lexi spent nearly a decade in public service at the federal level. She worked on Capitol Hill for 6 years as a legislative assistant to Senator Richard Durbin of Illinois. She also served in the Obama administration as a policy advisor in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, the U.S. Department of Education, and as a senior policy advisor on the Domestic Policy Council at the White House, helping to shape and advance President Obama's early education and K-12 education agenda. Lexi served on the Biden-Harris transition team as a navigator to Secretary-designated Cardona during his confirmation process. Welcome, Lexi. We also have Maureen Conway. Maureen serves as Vice President at the Aspen Institute and Executive Director of the Institute's Economic Opportunity Program, EOP. EOP works to expand individuals' opportunity to connect to quality work, start businesses, and build economic stability that provide the freedom to pursue opportunity. Maureen founded EOP's Workforce Strategies Initiative and has headed up workforce research at the Aspen Institute since 1999. Maureen also curates a public discussion series at the Aspen Institute called Opportunity in America, which brings together voices from business, labor, policy, human services, media, academia, and others to discuss the challenges experienced by many in today's labor market and new ideas for addressing these challenges. In addition, Maureen oversees EOP's Leadership Development Program, which connects innovators both within communities and from across the country to peers working to help low and moderate income Americans access opportunities. We also have Angela Hanks. Angela Hanks is Acting Assistant Secretary at the Employment and Training Administration at the U.S. Department of Labor. Previously, Angela was the Deputy Executive Director of the Groundwork Collaborative, where she worked to advance a cross-cutting economic narrative for the progressive movement. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, Washington Post, and The Atlantic, among others, and she is a regular contributor to Forbes. So as you can see, we have a very exciting group of panelists. Without further ado, Angela, my first question is actually for you. When we think about sector partnerships, we know that a successful partnership means bringing the right players in the workforce ecosystem to the table. Can you talk about how you have seen these various stakeholders come together to provide Americans with the training needed to land good paying jobs, as well as quality jobs?
Yes, so thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here with you today, and I'm very excited about EDA's Good Jobs Challenge, and excited to be here with my friends and colleagues to talk more about this opportunity. So just to dive into your question, I would say a couple of things. So I think from the Department of Labor's perspective, and I think this is a perspective that's shared administration-wide, quality job training is really about bringing together employers, education and training providers, and other supportive service providers in an industry sector, engaging worker voice and forging close partnerships between labor and management, and ensuring that those partnerships are truly centering equity in their work. We know that when employers and educators and workers partner in shaping and investing in the skills of America's workers, And when the workforce system invests in and supports those partnerships, that workforce development becomes less about one-off courses or skills deficiencies of individual workers and more about building the bridge between people and good jobs. I'll just give a couple of examples of where I think this has worked well, but I think Lexi and Maureen could give, I think, many more on top of this. But one I'll talk about that exists in our Deputy Secretary Julie Sue's home state of California, which is a high road training partnership model. So high road training partnerships identify industries where labor and management are willing to come together to commit to good jobs, often union jobs, and assess the skills needed for those jobs and build training programs together that not only meets current needs, but also trains for the future. And that structure really is focused on a couple of things. It's about quality jobs, it's about equity, and in the high road training context, it's also about sustainability and climate resilience, which I know is a priority for all of us and for the administration writ large. This is sort of one model, but these types of partnerships exist in healthcare, in logistics, and transportation, construction, janitorial services, and more. And there is a key role that many of the folks on the phone can and do play to scale these partnerships to meet the workforce needs in their regions. I would also say there are some models here that I think we would promote as being particularly effective, including registered apprenticeship, which build in this employer partnership model that we're discussing, along with industry partnerships that really the Good Jobs Initiative is structured to support. And I'll just highlight one, which is registered apprenticeships for childcare workers in Pennsylvania, run by the District 1199C Training and Upgrading Fund, which many folks may be familiar with. But I highlight that partnership in part because it really brings together this model of employer and labor partnerships, care, equity. This is an industry that's focused predominantly on women of color, and they're really kind of building the pieces together to ensure that we're boosting job quality, that we are bringing the quality that registered apprenticeship brings to these communities, and that we're filling a critical workforce need that I think we all know, especially right now, is really essential to our recovery. I'll pause there. I think there's a lot more we can say about quality partnerships, but I think the main thing I would take away is it really is about bringing together these stakeholders that really do bring complementary skills and resources to the table.
Angela, thank you for those examples, and I hope folks are taking copious notes here. Maureen, let me pivot here. Angela mentioned various times equity, and as many individuals may know, at EDA, we have taken a look at our investment priorities, and equity is at the top. I want to make sure that I would love to ask you, as applicants think about their proposals, how can applicants strengthen the partnership they are proposing by making sure that equity is leading the work they do? How do you suggest that they bring in those partners and really make it a very authentic engagement to make sure that equity is at the center?
Hey, thank you for that question, and thank you so much for having me on this panel. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here as a long-time sort of researcher and investigator of sector partnerships. It's really exciting to see this investment in capacity building like this. So just wanted to say thank you for that. And thank you for the question. I think this has always been really a central challenge, I think, in a lot of the work that I've researched over the years, is to think about sector partnerships with equity at the center. And I guess I would highlight a few key things. So one is, I think it's really helpful, and I know there are data challenges, but really use some data and try to really describe in a very objective way what is the equity challenge in the labor market that you're focused on, right? And I have seen organizations do this where it's really been able to kind of shine a light on things like occupational segregation and wage disparities in ways that people hadn't really kind of understood in the same way. They hadn't built sort of the same understanding of the challenge, and galvanized action, right? So they could see not only is it a challenge for those individuals, but it's also a challenge for differences in family well-being and other challenges in their community. So it really helped different stakeholders in the community have a common conception of the problem that they're about and build sort of a common purpose. So one piece I think is really important to think about using data and to the degree that you can't get disaggregated data, like try to reach out to people who can help you with that. I think that that's really important. The other thing is to think through who are the organizations, as you sort of identify your equity challenge, who are the organizations that reach the populations that are sort of have been most impacted, right? So, and are those organizations part of your partnership? If they are part of your partnership, are they a central part of your partnership? Can you deepen that relationship with those organizations? And as you sort of think about how to do that, you really want to think about sort of what are their knowledge bases, what do they bring, what are some of the challenges that they may face as well. So I wanted to highlight a couple things. So one example that I've seen where somebody partnered with organizations, they helped move the actual location of some training services, right, so that they were more accessible to the populations that they were trying to include. They might offer them at different times of day. They might do different things to make it so that people are going to a place that they feel comfortable going to rather than going to a place that they feel is not welcoming to them, right? So there's lots of different ways that building these partnerships can be important. And at the same time, they can also even help with some of those data challenges. So in this one Midwestern partnership that I was thinking about where they were focused on the building trades, they really had a good way of thinking about how can we help people develop some specific skills that they knew were going to be needed on some projects. How can they be accessible so that people can get jobs on those projects? And they really tracked sort of what is the makeup of people in the building trades jobs and how does that match our community, right? And they really were able to sort of have progress measures and work towards those progress measures and kind of all own them together. So I think that was a really important one. And then I guess I would say, this listen and learn, every organization has its struggles, right? Everybody's struggling with fundraising. Everybody's struggling with, do I get credit for this work so I can keep my fundraising going? And they're also struggling with performance and capacity and all those kinds of things. So understanding your partners, kind of where they're struggling and where maybe you can help them and where they can help you, I think is really critical to building an effective partnership. And just in this one partnership effort that we looked at in particular, where we're looking at community colleges and nonprofit partners who were, they noticed kind of that they tend to have different performance criteria, right? And sort of different ways that they need to be responsive to funding. So one's really kind of, they need somebody to get a job within a certain period of time. The other one needs somebody to complete a credential in a certain period of time. And sometimes those were in conflict, right? But sort of understanding each other's kinds of needs, they could see where's there a conflict, how do we resolve this in the best way for the student and the participant, right? And how do we then communicate out about that to our sort of mutual stakeholders? So if one or the other is unhappy, we have a common message about why that is. So I could go on and get into the nitty gritty of this, but I recognize that I should not do that. But I did want to say one last thing, because one of the things that I've been asked over the years by many people, and this is the Good Jobs Challenge, and I've heard from people who say, unfortunately, the jobs in my community, most of them just aren't that good. And what do I do about that? And I just want to say, I think that is a conversation that you can have with some of the employers you're partnering with, right? So some of them, they're good maybe on wages, but their benefits could use improvement, or maybe their scheduling practices. But you can sort of think about how to structure a conversation with them where you're trying to learn about their business and help them learn about what you know about the workforce that they're trying to reach and employ productively in their business. Because I think it can be a win-win to sort of have good jobs and sort of, have a strong workforce, right? So I think I would also just say that I just want to highlight that piece as well, that as you're building partnerships with companies, don't share information about how back with them, as well as try to get information and have conversations with them so that you can build strong partnerships there as well.
Maureen, thank you for that. You really have underscored some very important elements, particularly on the data, the organizations that are really working with communities that traditionally have not been part of the work that we do, as well as making sure that we understand where different partners are in their own capacity and development. So I appreciate that very much. Lexi, let me pivot to you again. The Good Jobs Challenge supports funding for wraparound support services to ensure that participants are able to complete their training and successfully land good jobs. How should applicants think about addressing these barriers to employment, particularly with respect to the type of partnership they are building in their communities?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I would say, like, first off, it's so exciting that these are services that can be a part of this partnership. Like, I feel like that is rare in a lot of federal funding opportunities. So it's an important one to jump on. And I think the most important first thing is to recognize that these kinds of wraparound supports are really critical to the success of the program participants. So if you're going to achieve the objectives you're out to achieve, this is an area that you really need to spend some time focusing on and thinking about what are the partnerships that you need to build to deploy against that. I mean, we know that too often barriers like access to transportation, childcare, language supports, career coaching, these are things that if they're not in place or that if they go off track, they can derail an individual's progression through the training and onto a good job. So that's really something that I would hope that everyone here would be paying a lot of attention to as they're developing their plan. And in thinking about how you want to integrate those wraparound services into the program and its development, I think there are lots of traditional partners who kind of come immediately to mind, right? A lot of workforce boards have really strong career coaching, career navigation services. Colleges that might be a part of the partnership also have career offices. They're often very used to navigating these challenges for students that they encounter. But I think it's also important to think outside that box too and consider what other partners there might be in the region or in the community that could be brought to the table. So thinking about human services organizations or community-based nonprofits that might be deeply rooted in the community and have a unique expertise in either providing, say, childcare or transportation themselves, or even making the connections for individuals to how they might get those services that they might have. And I think also it's important to think about how to make these partnerships effective too, right? That I think there's a way that you could do this that it's, oh, well, it'll be more of an afterthought or an add-on. Oh, we have a program participant that's off track. They hit a roadblock. Let's bring in someone to kind of help assist them with that. And that's really important. But I think to be most successful, these partnerships would really integrate wraparound services and the partners that are supporting those throughout a participant's experience so that they're being, the need for those services is being assessed and considered from the very beginning, so that any challenges are being identified and addressed before they become a crisis or before someone stops attending training, so that you know what to expect. And I think these sorts of partners really provide a real opportunity here to improve the impact, improve the success of the program as a whole. So I think my advice there is both make sure you're thinking about how to include it, but also think a little about outside the box of who you might bring to the table who might not already be there.
So as we close out, and thank you for that, Lexi, as we close out, let's just remind our participants that there's just a little bit over a month until proposals are due, January 26th of 2022. As we close out, just give us what advice would you give an applicant as they complete their proposals with respect to the partners they are including, they should be including? Angela, would you like to start?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I think that Maureen and Lexi have covered many already, but I think with a month left, I couldn't agree more. I think now is a good time to, let's say, make friends, start to reach out to some of those core partners, whether it's the type of partnerships that Lexi mentioned in human service, community-based organizations, boards, the state workforce or the public workforce system can be a really incredible resource here. And so if you haven't connected to your state board, your local board, I think that's now is a good time to do that. And really that is what is going to be the game changer here. So much of what we talked about today, it really does involve kind of all of these core stakeholders coming together to really deliver their piece of this. No one stakeholder can carry this on their own. And so really thinking through, starting with what are the needs of the population that I'm trying to serve, and then working through that to identify what communities and what stakeholders you need to bring into the process is a great start. And certainly, you know, I know with a month left, that can maybe feel like it's hard to sort of build the kind of strong relationship that you might need. But this, you can really consider this to be the beginning, and you'll have this partnership. But really is about connecting with those partners early to ensure that you can be successful.
Thank you, Angela. Maureen, what parting guidance would you provide?
Yeah, I think Angela summed things up really nicely. I think we've always kind of thought about sort of within these sort of like three intersecting circles of you need a really strong sort of education kind of and training strategy for folks. You need a really strong kind of industry navigation strategy, and you need a strong sort of kind of personal support strategy, right? You really need to think about a whole person and what their sort of life situation is so that they have the time and space to really participate in learning and building their skills and kind of moving forward in the labor market, right? And so thinking about your partners, do you cover kind of all three bases, and really are you able to bring them together well? I think those are the key points. And I guess the last thing I'll just say is I guess I would just plug, like we've done a lot of writing on these kinds of things on our website. You can find a whole bunch of resources from, a question bank for how to have conversations with employers to some of the work we did with the Communities that Work partnership, outlining different sort of partnerships. So, happy to help people navigate our website if they're interested in finding some resources.
Thank you, Maureen. Lexi, any parting words as we close this out?
Yeah, I think my last words would be a recommendation to think about who are these partners you're bringing to the table, but also how you're going to keep them there. And taking the time to think about and talk about roles, responsibilities, what are the expectations, what are the goals, building the relationships so that these aren't just partnerships on paper, but are really deep, equal partnerships amongst peers who are working together towards the same challenge. And as Maureen said, there are many, many examples and lots of great resources for how to do that well. But I know in the flurry of the last month of trying to get your application together, there could be an impulse to we just got to lock everything in. And that's important, but also take the time to make sure that you're setting up a structure that a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, these partners are still going to be at the table working together towards these goals.
Lexi, Maureen, and Angela, thank you so much. I think Maureen actually said it best. We could talk about this all day long. It is such a critical, not only conversation, but really how do we get the action going on? And I want to end by saying, I hope that everyone not only has a happy, but also safe, healthy holidays. And with that, I'm going to send it back to my colleague, Michelle Chang. Thank you so much for participating.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Assistant Secretary Castillo, as well as Maureen, and Lexi for those great insights. We are now going to move to our next panel, which will be focused on employer engagement. And for this panel, I am pleased to introduce our first panelist, who is Maurice Jones. Maurice was appointed CEO of 110 in March of 2021. 110 is a coalition of leading chief executives and their companies who are coming together to upskill, hire, and promote 1 million Black Americans over the next 10 years who have not had a four-year degree and get them into family-sustaining jobs with opportunities for advancement. Our next panelist is Andy Van Kluven. He is the CEO of the National Skills Coalition, which he founded in 2000 in collaboration with leaders from the workforce development and philanthropic communities. As a nationally recognized expert, Andy is a trusted advisor to governors, members of Congress, and state and local governments as they think about workforce policy and how to expand economic opportunity for every worker, every business, and industry. Our last panelist is Kimberly Shin. Kimberly is the managing director at Talent Rewire, which is an organization that's focused on innovative new approaches and tools and research to drive employer systems transformation and to subsequently scale team learnings into broader workforce field. She has supported a wide range of employers from Fortune 500 companies to small and medium-sized businesses to adopt new HR practices and policies that improve the economic mobility of their frontline. We've got a great panel here today with a lot of experience working with employers. And before we get started, I just want to talk a little bit about why we really wanted to bring these three folks to the table. One of the key components of the Good Jobs Challenge is employer engagement and employer commitments. And we know oftentimes this is a difficult thing to do. And as we all know, the marketplace is continually changing. And so what we really are hoping that Maurice, Andy, and Kim can bring to the table to you today is to give you a little flavor of what employers are grappling with today and how you can best think about really sustaining and building strong employer engagement in your application. So for our first question, I'm going to direct this to Maurice. As someone that's worked closely with employers, what advice would you have to applicants as they engage employers as they put together their proposal? What are some key issues that employers that you work with are grappling with right now, and how can applicants best support their efforts to fill vacancies?
Well, thanks for letting me be with you. I'm doing this from a vehicle in Mississippi, so hopefully you can hear and see me okay, yeah?
You're coming in great.
All right, great, great. So, look, I think what we're seeing within the 110 Coalition, which is now 60 companies and growing, are a number of things that employers are trying to do. First of all, they're trying to fill open positions, right? There are 11 million vacant positions that employers are trying to fill now. So what they are looking for are partners who can help them to actually source and sustain a channel, a pipeline channel of talent. And they need this talent from what we can see at all levels of their companies, right? Senior execs, entry level, and they're also trying to fill in behind retention challenges. So to the extent that folks can help find channels for pipelines of talent, these employers are reaching out, and they are reaching out to sources that they've not reached out to before or have reached out to very infrequently before. That's number one. Number two, they're also trying to make sure that their talent pipelines are diverse. And so they all, particularly the ones in the 110 Coalition, have DEI objectives that include making their workforces more diverse than they are today. And that's across the board: race, color, gender, age, geography, rural, urban. And so we're also seeing a need for them to partner, again, with organizations that can help them source this kind of diverse talent. The third thing that I would say is this notion that they have around upskilling, reskilling, continue to skill their incumbent workers. So they're having to make sure that they are creating better pathways for advancement within the companies, which means that they've got to continue. In fact, they have to up their game when it comes to investing in their existing talent, equipping that talent with skills and learning to take on more responsibility and jobs. So we're finding companies who are attempting to accomplish and wrestle with all of these challenges and opportunities, and are looking for partners, in particular, looking for partners that they have not had before, that hopefully can bring new value to these journeys that they're engaging in now.
Thank you, Maurice. Great. Andy, Kim, anything that you'd like to add to that?
I would just say, great. Obviously, Maurice is working with employers who want to diversify their workforces. And in a tight labor market, like, there's a lot of folks who are coming to the table now that we have an opportunity. In some ways, it might be a short-term opportunity to kind of take advantage of this. So it's really kind of a once in a moment thing that we should be jumping on. And I'm great that organizations like 110 and some of the folks that are applying for these grants are ready to do that today.
Great, thanks, Andy. For our next question, I'm going to direct this to Kimberly. As you know, having strong employer commitments to hire is one of the key components of the Good Jobs Challenge. We really want to place workers into good quality jobs. And so can you talk about how you've seen this successfully done with employers?
Yeah, I can absolutely. And thank you for inviting me in here into this forum. I mean, as Maurice just said, employers are looking for talent. They are experiencing uniquely, maybe unprecedented pain point around finding talent at all levels within their organization. So I would say before the pandemic, perhaps what was a really important point to make is making the case. You got to make the case of why they should commit to placement. I think the case is really obvious to a lot of employers. And right now, there are some employers who have been doing this type of diverse hiring, who understand the value of it. There's some employers who are newer to this, who said, gosh, we are having pain points in our talent systems, and we need to think differently about hiring, and they don't know how to do that. But I think for both of those parties, the case is pretty obvious to them. And so I think just connecting the dots of how a hiring commitment and committing to this partnership will meet their business needs. I would say the other thing to keep in mind that I've seen work is designing with not just the worker in mind. I absolutely believe that we need to have workers central to this, but designing with employers in mind. So really building relationships with them to understand what are their needs, what are the talent needs that they have, what are the roles they're trying to fill, what are the skills that they're looking for, what are the other challenges surrounding talent that they're experiencing? Do they have challenges also around retention? And designing with those needs in mind. And so more tactically speaking, I've seen this happen through organizations engaging employers with the co-design of their training program. So asking their input and co-designing a training program or a curricula with the employers to the extent that's possible and to the extent that they're able to engage. We've also seen creating work-based experiences such as job shadowing or internships that lead into full-time positions as a strategy to use to give employers exposure to the talent that they would be committing to hiring in advance. And then even utilizing and leveraging skills-based assessments to help employers have confidence that the talent that they are hiring will come with the skills that are necessary to their business. I think the third point that I want to communicate, though, that it is a partnership. We talked about partnerships amongst the nonprofits and the public sector, and it is a partnership with employers. So it's about what the employers are committing to this partnership, but it's also what we are committing to employers. And so to the extent necessary, what are the resources that you can bring to bear to help employers, not just with recruiting that talent, but retaining that talent? So we talked about, in the last panel, wraparound supports for students and participants, but thinking about how do you extend those wraparound supports even once they're placed, and what are the resources that we can bring to bear to employers to support employees to be successful on the job. And I also want to note, or kind of plus one, something that Maureen said about having conversations with employers about job quality. I think at this moment in time, in the great resignations, employers are having different conversations around job quality than they have had. Maybe they've had decades ago, but they're in a new way, I think, right now. And it's an opportunity really to have those conversations with employers and to bring best practice to them. Because I think for a lot of these employers, they don't know what to do, or maybe they have an understanding of what best practice is, what best practice benefits, wages, even employee engagement strategies are, but they don't know how to actually implement them within their company. So to the extent where you can offer support around that, I think that will help employers feel more committed to this partnership and comfortable in making this commitment.
That's great. Super helpful, Kim. Maurice, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, first of all, I second all of what Kim said. We're seeing all of those things be part of the commitments that our companies are making to hiring. Let me add just a couple other things. One is, look, you got to talk to, we're finding you have to talk to the right people within the companies, right? You got to get the commitments from, ideally, right? You got a CEO commitment, you got a CHRO commitment, or whoever the talent person is, and then particularly you're trying to get the commitments of the hiring managers, right? You need to be able to build relationships with all of those folks, is our experience, if you're really going to get hiring commitments. Particularly that latter, the hiring folks in the departments within the companies who really need talent. And so building relationships with these key people within the companies, we've also found as a key component to getting actual commitments to hire.
That's a great point, Maurice. It is oftentimes really important who at the employer you're actually talking to and working with. And so with that, Andy, I want to direct the next question to you. As our applicants are thinking about engaging with employers, how should they really think about bringing together potentially competing employers in the same sector? And how do they effectively bring them to the table to work together? And maybe even to take that a little bit further to what Maurice was saying too, how should they also think about approaching employers of different sizes? Obviously, we know a small company may not have a CHRO and a hiring manager. That all could be one person. So how should they also think about maybe how they approach employers of different sizes?
Yeah, Michelle, that's a great question. And again, I want to thank you for inviting us to be part of this. And I want to thank Commerce for taking the lead in what we hope are going to be a whole bunch of investments in these kinds of sector-based partnerships. We do have a great field of examples out there, and as applicants, we're thinking about like, what else could I be adopting? Folks mentioned Angela mentioned the California Hybrid Training Partnerships. Secretary Raimondo, when she was governor of Rhode Island, the Real Jobs Rhode Island model we've always held up is also another good example of how it is that you can bring a bunch of different stakeholders, including a bunch of different employers together in the same space, figure out not just how we're hiring for today, but how are we kind of rebuilding this industry in a way that we've got a local community-based workforce that's being trained and advanced over time and is building businesses as well as building better careers for a lot of folks locally. So we've got a lot of good models out there, but I think this is the particularly exciting part of the partnership aspect of these grants, which is we have a group of small employers that we work with called Business Leaders United for Workforce Partnerships. And these were a lot of small companies who were having a hard time not just hiring and retaining, but they were having a hard time kind of getting the attention of the local community college or the local workforce board because they weren't hiring that many folks. And small companies kind of figured out that if we came together as an industry, both we learn a lot about what each other is doing, but we also then can start to kind of change not just how I operate my company, but how we all kind of approach these workforce issues differently. And I remember one of our founders of Business Leaders United used to talk about sitting down with his competitor peers, these other local businesses, other local manufacturers, but they had a workforce challenge that they couldn't solve by themselves. And also a lot of them wanted to be like different community players. And if you really are serious about diversifying your workforce, if you really are serious about how it is that can hire from different places than I've hired from before, or folks who don't have the education or work experience that's been my typical applicant. And we are in that place right now, both because of the tightness of the labor market and because I do think, as Maurice and Kim have both said, I think we have the business community is highly motivated to do this, but they know that they need some help. They know how to run their companies very well, but they don't know how to necessarily help manage somebody's childcare. They've hired a single mother who they've never really kind of hired a lot of single mothers before, but having a partner within the partnership that can help them think through some of those challenges is incredibly valuable to them. So it's not just about hiring, it's about retention and advancement. And a lot of small companies are looking for that kind of assistance. But of course, context is everything. So to your point, larger companies who have in-house training programs, who have obviously HR staff and whatever, there are some challenges that they face as well. Their motivations for coming to a local partnership might be somewhat different. Likewise, we have different industries are going to think about this different ways. So like if you look in a manufacturing partnership, if you're thinking about bringing a manufacturing partnership in for application, the way that the dynamic of supply chains where you have larger companies who are actually purchasing components from smaller companies, there's a logic to how it is. You could say, like, we need to make sure that everybody in this region, every manufacturer has enough skilled workers that we can kind of keep the thing going. If you're working in retail or hospitality, that dynamic is a little bit different. So how it is that you're going to bring different companies to the table in that context is going to be different than maybe in manufacturing. And I think that sometimes we have found and heard that when you have a diversity of companies around the table within one of these partnerships, they may have a lot of different workforce challenges. They may not all be the same. So then maybe narrow the focus of what it is that the partnership is trying to solve. Maybe it's a particular occupation that everybody's having a hard time filling, or even a particular set of skills that are coming into the industry, and folks have not figured this out. I mean, retail is a good example of this. It doesn't matter whether you're Walmart or a local mom and pop. The digitalization of retail has just changed dramatically over the past year and a half, and everybody is trying to figure out how to do that, both with their current workforces as well as hiring new people who bring that level of digital skills into the industry. And so that might be a good example where I kind of a narrowing on just focusing on that particular problem rather. You can bring a bunch of different people to the table in a way that if you said, let's solve every workforce problem that everybody has, that might be too diffuse for what it is that's actually going to get folks there and to focus on what they can work on together.
Great, thanks, Andy. Kim, Maurice, any other thoughts on how our applicants can think about bringing either companies of the same sector together or even some other things about how to approach maybe a Fortune 500 company versus a small business?
Kim, I'll let you go first. I do want to jump in, but I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've been surprised by, because in the way in which we work with employers is in a cohort manner, is that yes, companies want to be competitive in their business, but there is actually a genuine interest in and a recognition that at some point within their communities, they have a shared purpose in improving the economy and the vitality of their local community. And so I've seen that being a uniting force. And I think in like one group, I just remember one employer saying, you know, it's not a war for talent. Let's collaborate for talent and let's see how we can actually cause all boats to rise. And I just actually probably want to +1 Maurice's point around multi-level engagement within a company, particularly for the large ones. I think it is really helpful to have that CEO coverage and that commitment. But then when it comes to the implementation and the doing, have engaging those HR, those talent acquisition managers, and those who are in charge of hiring is so important. And that's what we try to do as well, is to do that multi-level, multi-stakeholder engagement.
Yeah, and I would add 2 or 3 things. One of the things that has been useful for us has been the notion of actually trying to create a community of practice amongst the employers, meaning bringing the employers, literally curating a community amongst the employers where they are actually collaborating to solve issues of sources of talent, channels for talent, how to create an environment within their companies that are more conducive to retaining talent, talent of color and other talent. That this notion of actually creating a coalition, and you can do it geographically, you could do it across industry, you could do it with virtual or remote jobs. There are a number of ways you can slice it. But this notion of a community of practice amongst the employers, we found that the employers are loving learning from one another, even their so-called competitors. And so I would encourage folks to think about how to actually try to curate a community of practice amongst the employers. And then with respect to the smaller employers, we are definitely finding that with them, we've got to recognize that the economics are different, right? The point was made earlier. The CEO may be the CEO and the head of talent and the head of IT and et cetera. And so, you know, really trying to understand how to add value to the smaller businesses is something that we found that we definitely got to do to convince them that our work is more than just about the larger companies. And again, that's about a relationship, right? That's about listening and trying to find the places where you can add value to the small businesses, but being intentionally reaching out and letting folks know that they belong.
Thank you so much. I think hopefully our participants on the line all got as much value from this as I know I did. So first of all, thank you so much to Maurice, Andy, and Kim for your extremely thoughtful insights on employer engagement. I think it will be extremely helpful to our applicants as they are putting together their proposal. So thank you very much.
Nice
Now,
to be
as
with you
we
all.
close off today's session, we're just going to close with a couple last parting comments as you all dive into the holiday season, and hopefully I know are also completing your application. We're going to pull back up our slides, and if we could just go to the next slide, please. We want to reiterate a couple last things as you are finalizing your proposals. The first thing that we want to call your attention to is to look at EDA's investment priorities. We actually revisited our investment priorities earlier this year and revised them. And you can find them on our website on the site that you see on this slide. What we want to call attention to is that these are the key elements that we at EDA look at in terms of the different proposals and projects that we fund. As you see, at the top of the list is equity. That is our #1 investment priority at EDA. And if you look at our website, we spell out what equity means to us. It really is focusing on projects that have a strong emphasis on helping underserved populations or communities. And so we really urge you to really think about how, as our panelists discuss, how you can partner with different organizations in your community to be able to really ensure that your proposals have a strong focus on equity. The other couple investment priorities I just want to call out here is that recovery and resilience. Obviously, during this time, as we are all continuing to deal with the pandemic and the changing effects that it has in the workplace, this is an area where we really want to build capacity in regions to help that workforce get the skills that they need to help meet employer needs so that we can continue to increase job creation and growth in our communities across the country. And so really urge you to think about how the programs that you are designing and the programs that you are proposing really help with the overall recovery and resilience efforts across our country. And then, not surprisingly, as you see, #3 on our investment priorities is workforce development. And this is what this program is all about. We want to build the capacity in regions to be able to continually have the ability to respond to employers' needs and the changing skills that are required in a community to be able to fill vacancies to help that local economy continue to grow and thrive. All right, next slide, please. What we also want to just make sure that you walk away with as you think about finalizing your applications is to really take a look very carefully at the evaluation criteria for the Good Jobs Challenge. As we've mentioned a few times, this program is going to be very competitive. We have received an unprecedented amount of interest in this program, and we really strongly urge you to put your best foot forward. Make sure that you're taking very close, careful attention to our notice of funding opportunity, particularly how applications are going to be applied. And if you take a look at pages 27 to 29 of our notice of funding opportunity, we have laid out the 8 different evaluation criteria for this program. And what we've listed here on this slide right here are the high-level categories that we are evaluating, but what you will see in the notice of funding opportunity is details on each of these 8 elements. And so just to spell them out so you can see them very clearly. The first is the development of key plans to support a regional workforce training system or sectoral partnership. As we talked about before, EDA is really focused on building systems and increasing the capacity in regions to be able to respond to workforce needs. And so that's what we're really looking for here, is how you're going to build that regional workforce system and build the capacity of that system to be able to respond and react to future workforce needs. The second is looking at the system lead entity or the program or a backbone organization's capacity. As we know, that capacity of that organization to bring together a regional workforce system is so critical. In our notice of funding opportunity, we actually spell out some of the key things that we'll be looking for in that organization's ability. One note, we have got some questions around whether these entities need to be strong, established, long-standing entities. They do not need to be. We are really looking for particularly regions that have never had a strong workforce system or don't have one in place. This is an opportunity for you to get the funding to build that regional workforce system and build that entity's ability and capacity to be able to address workforce needs in that region. And so, although we are looking for that ability to do that from these organizations, we're also open to organizations who have demonstrated that they can do this in other sort of settings and are going to be able to apply that experience in this sort of context. The third element is workers served and job placements expected. We have a strong emphasis with this program around job placement and also the number of workers served. And with that, we are also looking around equity. So really want to spell out as much as you can your plans, or if you have already been able to get that securement from employers of what type of job placements you expect from your programs. The next is employer partnerships. We've talked about this a lot in our last panel. We are looking for very strong employer engagement in these programs. And so what we urge you to do is really outline how you intend to work with employers and what that partnership will look like. The next is identification of regional needs. This is really working with employers and industry in your communities to really understand what jobs have the most vacancies, what type of skills are needed, and to be able to help show that there is a strong process to be able to identify those needs and to be able to address them. Next is regional investment and sustainability. We recognize that we cannot fund these regional workforce for perpetuity, and so we are looking for that investment and that commitment from others in the region to really have skin in the game to make sure that these programs are successful for the long term. We are also looking around feasibility. How feasible are the projects that you are outlining? Are we going to have strong confidence that you're going to be able to execute the plans that you have outlined? And then lastly, as we mentioned, equity is our #1 investment priority. So we'll be looking very closely at these proposals at how strong the equity lens is, how strongly they'll be focused on underserved communities and populations. Next slide. The last thing we wanted to leave you all with today is that, as we mentioned, we know that we have a lot of interest for this program. And so as we are getting ready to evaluate all the great proposals that you all are putting together, we want to make sure that we have a strong sense of what we've got coming our way. And so what we are asking folks to send us is an optional intent to apply email. We ask that you send this to us by January 5th, 2022. And so we strongly urge potential applicants to notify us of their intent to submit an application by January 5th by sending an email to the goodjobschallenge@eda.gov email. Your intent to apply email should include the applicant's name and a contact person with contact information. We do want to stress that this intent to apply is completely voluntary. There will be no impact on an applicant's consideration, and there will be no consequences if an applicant submits an intent to apply or does not. So we just urge you, if you can, to send an email, but it is completely optional. Next slide. And just to close out, just to make sure you have all the resources, definitely urge you again to take a look at our website, eda.gov/ARPA. On that site, you will find a link to the Good Jobs Challenge. You will find FAQs on that site, as well as recorded webinars on the Good Jobs Challenge, as well as technical webinars on how to apply for an EDA grant. On this site, on this page right now that you see, you also see a link to our Notice of Funding Opportunity, as well as a link to find your local economic development district for planning support and technical assistance. And lastly, we urge you, if you have any questions about this program as you are winding down in the last month before the deadline, to send an email to the goodjobschallenge@eda.gov. We have folks standing by ready to answer any questions that you have about our program. All right, and with that, we just want to thank you all again for your interest in this program and for your hard work. I know many of you have been working around the clock getting your proposals ready. And I will say the one thing that we are so excited about already is that we've heard about all of the great coalitions and partnerships and collaborations that have already happened because of this application. And so that's exactly what we want to see, is that coalition building and that partnership and that capacity building. And so with that, we thank you so much for joining us today. We wish you a wonderful holiday season, and we are so excited to see all of your great proposals in the new year. Thank you very much.